Hello YouTube. The purpose of this video is to show some of the differences between handheld devices in playing Warframe, uh, largely an Ally X with SteamOS, and the brand new iPhone 17 Pro. Not the Pro Max, but the Pro. And I'll show a few cameos just to show some of the size comparisons between some of these devices. So I do have a Switch. How much time do I have playing on this? Basically none. But if you wanted to do a quick size comparison, you can see that the Switch is surprisingly close to the 17 Pro. Now, if you had a Pro Max, this would be probably the same size overall. Some of the considerations is that if you're playing a setup like this, you're probably traveling. And the convenience of traveling between these devices is massive. So the last couple times I've flown, I didn't want to fly with my device because I generally just pack a backpack and have enough clothes and enough stuff that can fit within that. And then I don't have to worry about carry-on. I don't have to worry about checked-in baggage. And one of the problems with the Ally X is how large this carrying case is. So if you are someone that does run a Switch, you can see some of the differences between these carrying cases is pretty massive. This you could slip in the bag and be just fine. The Ally X is like, okay, so maybe I have to pack 2 less days worth of clothes, or I don't get to pack as much accessories or your charger or something. Or you have to get a lot larger bag and then you run to that threshold of, does this actually fit under the seat or not? So I've largely not traveled with the last couple of times I've had to fly. If I were to compare these two in size and usability, the difference really isn't that large. And part of that too is because if the screen's slightly smaller, you can just hold it closer to your face and you get kind of the same experience. The visual quality and the UI design on the iOS version is overall better. And I'll show what it looks like in a mission on iOS and how it plays on iOS. Doesn't translate as well through this camera, I would say, but the subjective experience is a pretty extreme PC gamer as I've been for the last 13, 14 years of running really high-end hardware. To put in perspective, I play this game on PC at 4K, 240 hertz, and it's almost always above 240 FPS. There's some 1999 scenarios where even 9800X 3D doesn't maintain above 240. It maybe drops to like 160, but that's still pretty extreme in comparison to running a handheld where the frame rate right now is at 76 frames per second on like medium settings, full performance profile on this device. So it's running a good solid like 30 watts between the SoC on this. What real wattage this runs at, I'm not too certain, but the 17 Pro's redesign, yeah, you can feel that this thing's doing some work because the aluminum heatsink, which is the chassis, and the vapor chamber are definitely doing a good job at dissipating that heat and putting it into your hand or the environment passively. Impressive how well this thing runs on a 17 Pro. To the point where I don't really see the purpose of having a Ally X anymore, since I largely only play Warframe when I'm playing on a handheld. So I don't see the purpose of having this thing anymore, because I can just run this. I'll show this, because this is a device you guys might not know exists, but this is how far my experience with handhelds goes back when it comes to running PC games on handheld. This is the Nvidia Shield Portable. This was a very quickly obsolescent device. It's a Tegra APU that runs Android that hasn't been able to receive updates for probably like 10 years at this point, because I've had this since 2013. Just thought I'd cameo that. So I think that's enough demonstration. I'm careful what I do on the Ally X. I can't play a mission on the Ally X. I'm not logged in on the Ally X. It's just instanced in a weird way where it's letting it stay up even though it's not logged in. So I'll push this out of the way and we'll get into a mission and show. So I have a couple of years-ish now, whenever the Steam Deck OLED versus October 2025, whenever that came out, that's about as much time I have on running controllers on Warframe. So not crazy amount of experience, but I've got a lot of game time playing on the Steam Deck OLED before, and then the Ally X on Windows, either even eGPU dock. You can kind of see some of the eGPU stuff I have, even one of the original 2016 Razer cores. I've spent a lot of time running this kind of more extreme and esoteric hardware. So I say that in the intent to show that this isn't something I've only recently started experiencing and dealing with. So I don't think my opinion is taken lightly when it comes to the experience on this, especially with how extreme I run this on desktop. So actually, I should probably start paying attention here. Can last grass just fine. This build isn't one that I have a discrete build video on. This is my like Warcry version that I was just recently did a video on with some slight variations within it. I've been doing some testing. I might make a video on this. Warcry isn't the best option for Excalibur overall because it doesn't really make a lot of sense with slash dash. But if you were to take a holistic quality of life approach to building Excalibur, Warcry is actually a really good option, even if you don't run triple Umbral mods and you're only running Archon Vitality, which on my Afflictions build doesn't really matter. But when you're not running triple Umbral mods, you can, instead of running the Fiber and Vitality, you can run Continuity, Archon Continuity, and Archon Vitality. And I've been testing this before I get enough Umbral shards or Umbral Forma to revert back. But I've been testing it, and it's very acceptable. The thing about Warcry, when you're playing on Excalibur and you're slash dashing around, your companion, one of the changes that buffed something like Prime Pack Leader when they did the Pseudo Exalted rework, is that it used to not proc things like Prime Pack Leader when you slash dashed. It wasn't coded as a melee attack unless you had Exalted Blade drawn, and then the waves were the thing that was actually counting as such. So now when I slash dash, my companion does get overguard with Prime Pack Leader. And then while I'm slash dashing, because I'm running Hunter Recovery, my companion is now healing me if I don't have full health. So there's nice little synergy between Hunter Recovery, Prime Pack Leader, and then some sort of Pseudo Exalted, or like you could do this on Atlas, you could do this on a lot of the other ones. I obviously don't play those. If you're seeing my channel for the first time, talking about the 17 Pro on iOS version or Ally X in general, then I make Excalibur videos, and almost exclusively Excalibur, because that's how I played this game since the beta, for the last 12 plus years. So you can see slash dash works just fine. The extra armor when you're running something like Warcry, even with only 740 and base armor respectively on Excalibur, it actually works pretty well on even Steel Path content. So this probably warrants its own build video. I need to do a little bit more testing. I've only got like a few hours of in-game time on this specific variation. You can see there my health dropped, but not enough to die. And then if you're casting enough abilities, you don't necessarily run into an issue where you're you're not getting brief respite procs. Enough about the build, though. I don't have to recast Warcry, but you can if you want a little bit of extra from Ult Augmented on this build. Obviously, I'm not as fast on a handheld as I am on my Windows version with mouse and keyboard, which does not work right now on iOS. So don't even think about it if you're going to run iOS. This is the best way. I even tried docking to see if docking worked well, and it was pretty buggy, just like not translating properly, since this Background Pro does support Bluetooth. And so you can run it off the device via Bluetooth. You don't have to be plugged into the Type-C port. But It was quite buggy. So this is really the most optimal way to play it. I would not recommend playing this without a controller. The touchscreen controls, maybe you could be good at it, but I certainly don't ever find I don't think they're sufficient to for me to ever get good at using the touchscreen controls. Uh, the controllers the controller controls are limiting enough for me comparison to mouse and keyboard that it's at least acceptable, but I would not recommend using touchscreen controls to actually play this game. So usually, and this is something to note about the iOS version, the mob density is more like console version. So if you've been playing enough, especially crossplay, this became quite noticeable. Consoles have less or mob density, about like anywhere from a third times to 5 times less mob density as it is on PC, and that has to do with the hosting. So if your host is a console player, you have a noticeably reduced mob density versus PC, and this also applies to handhelds. So the mob density on handhelds is the same that it is on a full-fledged desktop. This appears to be closer to console mob density. And is that a big problem? It depends. Depends on what you think. So noting that I wasn't even really going that hard and getting almost 558 kills. If I was full swinging, if I wasn't talking and discussing while doing this, and I was holding this in a little bit better position, I could see myself still getting to like that 700, 800 range that I would normally expect on that mission type. So, like I said, I won't be playing on this guy because I feel like this is any moment from kicking me out, since I logged into this first and then logged into this, and somehow I'm still logged in on this. I digress. Try not to break my profile while doing it too. So the conclusion I'll have for this, just overall, I don't see a reason to have this device anymore, since I largely play Warframe on it, if I can just carry this controller thing and a pretty basic charger and use my phone to play. The usability difference between them is, like, the iOS version has some usability limitations, but so does this running the Windows version, where they're probably the same. Like, they're not exactly the same, but if you had to take it on both ends and then work its way in, it's like they kind of fall into the same category of usability. Where I would say I have no issue just running it on the 17 Pro and playing and being quite happy playing this game on the 17 Pro, and then having my full-fledged desktop, where I don't really see the point of having this device anymore. So if you have any questions about any of this, I won't be playing much more on this device, but I will be playing a lot more on this, and looking forward to every single update on iOS, especially when they add more than 60 frames per second on this, if this device can even reach that, which I don't think it can. It seems to, you probably noticed every once in a while during the gameplay that there was some frame rate hitching, where it drops to like what feels like 30 frames per second. This does only go up to 60. I'll show that. Options. So some of the settings on this. So I've turned off thermal throttling because this device does a really good job at keeping itself, you're not even holding it, so it's not using your hands as a heat sink. It's just passively cooling this device. 17 Pro's thermal solution is very effective. You can feel it. The fact that the device gets hot means that it's functioning. If it wasn't getting hot, I'd be worried. Because thermodynamics does exist. The field of view, the limitation of 72 does not feel like a problem. I do not notice it. It does seem to have is the camera is actually farther back. The camera feels like it's in a better spot on this iOS version versus running it on a handheld on this guy. It feels farther back. It feels maybe like 30 to 40% farther back, and you can kind of tell. You might be able to see it in the gameplay, but it's noticeable. Like if you run into the issue where your shoulders are blocking your field of view, this might be better on iOS. I don't really run cosmetics, as you can tell, or like large bulky cosmetics. but I could see that being less of an issue. So I'd say overall, there's not very many settings. Disabling all of the nonsense settings as usual. I do set it to 90% resolution scale. I haven't played around too much with this. 90% seems to be just fine, but you know, the iPhone doesn't have a low resolution display, so lowering this even farther might be worth it. Or using the adaptive. I'll be playing around with it. I don't have a full guide yet on this, but thought I'd at least show at a minimum what the large difference between these two devices are, which I find more than acceptable as a pretty pretty elitist, snobby PC user that's run high in hardware for a very long time. So without rambling any further, thanks for watching.